All right. Good morning. It is another Monday in the SEC. We have so many things to talk about. I want to know when we're going to have a Monday morning where we don't have, a coaching firing, coaching searches, all the things to get into. But it's not this Monday because this Monday we do have lots to talk about. Hey guys, how are y'all doing?
Doing good. Doing fine.
TJ, you doing all right?
Yeah, I had a good weekend. It's like mixed emotions. But
Extended.
if in the very micro, it was a good Saturday. Florida State won. All of Florida State's rivals lost.
Huh.
Actually, Florida State was the only team in the state to win because USF didn't play, UCF lost. Like it was, but in the macro or in the zoomed out, it's still not a happy time. But yeah, it was a good Saturday.
You're not getting a new coach right now.
Yeah, unfortunately. So it's a hard place to be. Like I would never cheer for Florida State to actively lose a game, but at the same time, do I think that them winning the game is what's best for the program long term, which is more so my concern because the season is already over. It's a situation where, like against Stanford, I was not actively cheering that they would lose the entire game. But when they were down by 10 in the fourth quarter, I was kind of like, yeah, don't come back. Now, obviously, that didn't end up mattering. If the same would have happened with Wake, they were down 10 or something in the fourth quarter, I'd be like, all right, well, I don't want you to just miracle win this because you've got better athletes. Like, just go ahead and finish the job. But because they were up big, it was like, all right, well, go ahead and finish it off and win, for the players and the people that are there and everything else. But yeah, it's a weird spot.
Yeah, it definitely. Now Auburn fans join us in this weird spot. Although I guess I don't know. So, do you think you're actually in the worst position of everybody? Like the teams that are in the hunt for the playoff in November, they're like, oh yeah, November, this is awesome, this is great. The teams like Will and I, who are in a coaching search, like we're intrigued too because we know that there's like hope on the horizon. Do you think you're actually in the absolute worst position of those three? Because there's really not hope, but there's also not really a new coach on the horizon or playoffs.
I don't know if we're in the worst spot from a fan perspective.
Feel that way for fans.
Yeah, for a fan perspective, yes, because hope is, but it's also the same. Like I could turn it back on you and say hope is what actually kills you. Like at least at Florida State, you understand that like, yeah, you're not in a great spot, but you also understand that. Florida fans, this is not trying to make a joke here. Florida fans have had false hope 4 straight coaching cycles. And so like, yeah, I mean, maybe Florida fans feel a little bit better because of where they're at, but like we might get 2.5 years down the road from now and we're talking about the same thing with UF, right? Like it wouldn't shock anybody if that's the case. And really with everybody, because coaching searches and hires are ultimately such a crapshoot, we can think something's going to be the most slam dunk thing ever. And it turns out to be a bust. And then we can think something's going to be just completely awful. And it turns out to be really great. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think from a fan perspective, yes. From a program perspective, we're all about, everybody's all about the same. Miami's going to win 9 or 10 games and they can't figure it out down there. So they're not happy. Florida fans have maybe real hope, maybe false hope right now. And Florida State fans are just in wait and see mode. So like, I feel like nobody's really
happy.
Well, Florida fans are the happiest for sure. But I mean, ironically, Florida has the worst record and they're the happiest right now. Yeah. But from a program perspective, like it's all wait and see mode. Will Mario finally get over the hump? Will Florida finally hire the right guy for the first time in 5 tries? Will Florida State, get out of their situation? Like nobody really knows. So fan perspective, I think Florida is in the best spot, which is funny because again, Miami's still a top ranked team, but from a program perspective, it's all about the same. It's all not good enough in this state.
Well, the big news over the weekend was that Hugh Freeze.
Try that one again.
Hugh Freeze is out at Auburn. Now, this is like, I don't think anything that anybody is shocked by at all. We were just kind of wondering like when that shoe would drop, not really if that shoe would drop. He has already put out a statement to the fans, and Auburn is now on the hunt. We thought at the beginning of the year that maybe they had figured some stuff out. Week 1, they looked decent. We thought this could be their year. They've played so many close SEC games, they just can't get over the hump. And that's Hugh Freeze has said all season, I know we are this close. Are they really this close?
If they were really that close, you would think they'd swing one of these games the right way instead of being 4-5. I mean, the whole Freeze era, like the quarterback play was just a nightmare the entire time. You had Peyton Thorne, and then you put all your chips into Jackson Arnold, and I thought he was going to be great in August. Week 1, I thought I was vindicated. It just didn't work out. And then you bring in Ashton Daniels this past week, does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And this stat, maybe you guys saw it. There's only 3 teams in the sport who haven't allowed more than 24 points in the game this year. It's undefeated Ohio State, undefeated Indiana, and 4-5 Auburn. Like the offense is just it was never there, which feels backwards for a Hugh Freeze team. But just what he was supposed to do didn't work. And you can say you're close all you want when you continuously are just close and you can't ever get there. Like it's time to make a change. So I think this was the right move for Auburn, but it's not a great year to have to be looking for a coach, but I do think it was the right decision for them to make.
TJ, did you find it interesting that Tim Brando and others really felt like this was the right move, but have maybe criticized some of the other coaching firings that have happened this year?
I mean, I think people like Brando and others have inherent biases that formulate like what I really don't care what many of the talking heads say. I don't, I'm not anti Brando like all of UF's fan base is, but I'm also not like pro. I'm pretty indifferent to what most of the talking heads say. I mean, if you look at this Auburn situation though, like they didn't even have any good wins. Like what's their best? I mean, maybe Will knows this better than I do. Like what's their best win from his tenure?
It's an awesome question.
Like Florida,
I can find anything.
And Texas wasn't playing well then, but Florida can point to a win against Texas. They can point to a win against Utah to open things up. They can point to a win where Tennessee was ranked and nobody thought Florida could win in the Swamp. They could point to the Ole Miss and LSU games last year. Florida had, beat Florida State last year. Not that they were good, but like, Florida at least did some things well under Napier. And I mean, Auburn just, icing on the cake to go in and score 3 points against Kentucky. They put too much in, and you've got to get the quarterback position right. And so, again, I will say that too. So not to just kind of harp on the same idea or the same thought that he had, but I mean, there is so much talent. I mean, if you gave Alabama or Georgia their defense, like they would be the national championship favorite, and not even close. You gave Ole Miss their defense. I mean, if you gave, obviously Ohio State's already got a good defense. And so maybe we don't need to go outside of the SEC there. But they've got such a good defense and they've got great weapons and their offensive line. I mean, they're just so bad at the quarterback position. And when a team should go about 500 in their one possession games. And sometimes there are anomalies like Florida State's 0-4 in their one possession games. And so there are anomalies where the ball just doesn't bounce your way multiple times in a row. But just to not pull out any of the one, like they've been, I mean, in Hugh's defense, they have been close, but that doesn't win you a lot, right? It doesn't matter if you lost to Georgia by 50 or by 3. That doesn't matter. You've got to find a way to come out on top in some of these close matchups. And the SEC's a grind, and it's really tough, and we get it, but it's just unacceptable at a place like Auburn, who, I don't think Auburn's a serious, not to, their fans will hate this, but like, I don't think they're a serious like national championship contender year in and year out. But with their investment level, they need to be doing better than they are, right? Their floor needs to be 8-4, and they need to beat the Kentuckys of the world, and they need to every once in a while upset a UGA or upset Alabama like they have in the past, or beat some of these teams like A&M or whoever. So yeah, I mean, just ultimately not good enough. And again, he screwed up the quarterback position so bad, and that really should be kind of his bread and butter, being an offensive guy. So I mean, not surprised at all.
Unless I'm missing one, their best win under Hugh Freeze was last year. They beat 8-3 A&M in that 4 overtime game.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
I think that's their best one.
Yeah, and they were 15 in the country at the time.
Even that A&M like completely nosedived after 7-1. I'm not trying to take anything away from Auburn, not that it matters now, but that A&M team was maybe a little bit of fool's gold anyway, and so. I don't know, for that to be your best win, again, compare that with all of Billy's best wins. I mean, shoot, even Mike Norvell's got better wins than that. Like all these guys that we don't think are good enough have significantly better wins than Auburn
just
has on the whole.
Couple of the last season last year, LSU and Ole Miss are probably better wins. Kept both those teams out of the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, definitely Definitely interesting, definitely underperformed. But then we got to talk about who are realistic candidates for Auburn. Who do they go after? This is a very crowded year to be looking for a head coach. Where do you place them in terms of tiers for, you know, who is available, and is this a fourth team chasing Lane Kiffin? Who do they target?
Lane
I mean,
Kiffin's actually coaching for everyone next year. He
Yeah,
is
he's
coaching every single game in the SEC for every single team. So
he'll be
it'll
coaching
be pretty
through a
cool.
quad box. It's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, it'll be the Lane channel. If YouTube TV can figure out their crap with ESPN, it'll just be the Lane channel. He's coaching Auburn and Ole Miss and Florida and LSU. Maybe he'll spot some games on some bye weeks too. I don't know.
But I mean, like to your point, Alec, I think that Auburn's definitely below Florida and LSU. They might be a bit of a notch below Penn State also. So I don't know if you're Auburn, if you can go get any of these big guys. So I think the biggest name you can go after is probably John Summerall. I mean, he's from Alabama originally. I think he's probably the number one guy. I think Brent Key's on the list also. And maybe go, if you want to go coordinator, Glenn Schumann from Georgia, because he's getting a lot of head coach talk. So I think he's one of those three guys. I'm just not sure that they can get one of the bigger names. And like Drinkwitz wouldn't go there because that would make any sense for him. Like, I'm not sure you can even get another SEC coach who might be going away, who's not Lane Kiffin, just because it would be a lateral move. So I do think that they're kind of stuck in a spot where they can't get one of the big names, because I think this Franklin of Virginia Tech stuff is probably pretty real, where he's not going to be available for him. So I think it's probably a group of five guy, if not Brent Key, or maybe just a coordinator.
Do you think Brent Key would even leave Georgia Tech for Auburn? I mean, I find that we have discussions about whether or not Brent Key would leave Georgia Tech for Florida or LSU or one of the top jobs that are open. Does it make sense that he would even consider leaving Georgia Tech for Auburn?
I'd probably be surprised if he does. I just kind of put him down here as sort of a culture fit in my mind.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right. I think it'd be hard to get him to leave there really for any job. But yeah, I mean, Auburn is definitely not the most appealing of the ones that are open. So I do think I think you're right there. I think I'd be surprised if he left.
TJ, what do you think? Who is on their hot board?
They say in coaching hires, you should not go after you shouldn't just try and do the opposite of what you did last time. Like, try and date somebody opposite of your ex. Right? So they went for the flashy, like, oh, Hugh Freeze had been in the SEC. He had upset Bama sometimes. He was pretty good at Liberty, all these things. He kind of reshaped his image a little bit. And so they went for the best they could do at that point, the supermodel blonde, right? And so do you go for the girl next door in John Summerall, which is a hot name, but still a group of five? Like, that would be what I do. Like, to me, that's the call, is you go get somebody who knows how to build a program. And ultimately what we have learned is that there is so much variance with a group of five coach. But let's be fair. There's a lot of variance with Power 4 coaches that come in, or Power 5 coaches, when the cycle happened last time. So I think that's the call you have to make. And you can offer him a substantial, they'll pay a substantial amount of money. Freeze's buyout wasn't that much. I know they're paying 3 buyouts, or their 3 buyouts combined are like $54 million across their last 3 coaches. But I mean, I think Freeze's buyout wasn't insane at like $15 million and change. Crazy to say that that's not insane, but compared to the other stuff that we've seen this cycle. So I think that has to be your move. And not that you just want to go opposite of what you did last time, but that is what programs ultimately do. And they try to go different. And if Summerall doesn't work out, or if he leaves for an even bigger job at some point, then I think you probably go back the other way. You try and get a flashy guy that had success in the past. But to me, it feels like that's the coach that makes the most sense. And I think he will stabilize them. I think he could. I'm not putting Kentucky on Auburn on Kentucky's level, but he could be like a Mark Stoops that really stabilizes them for quite a while until he either gets them over the hump, or, sorry, Auburn fans, somebody else jumps in and steals him at like a massive job, like a Texas if Sark leaves or whatever, right? So that makes the most sense to me. The other names that were mentioned, I don't think he would leave. I just find it really hard. I know that Key and Brom and Dillingham get brought up a lot, but it would take a lot, I feel like, for any of those guys to leave their alma mater, especially because they're all having varying levels of success. If Georgia Tech was obviously if Georgia Tech was 4-8 every year,
You
then
wouldn't be interested in him as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just if you're winning at Georgia Tech and your path is easier, right? Your path is much easier in the ACC. Like they lost this weekend and they're still supposed to go to Charlotte if they can win out. I don't know why you would leave to try and rebuild something when you kind of have something cooking. Is Auburn? I mean, I agree that Auburn's the fourth best job available right now. Like I'd put it behind Penn State at this moment. But like, how much better, money aside, how much better is the Auburn job than Georgia Tech? Like when you think about
I don't
it,
think you can put money aside when you.
but I mean, okay, so
that is, it's I think better conference and more money.
So what are the advantages for Georgia Tech? Easier path.
You're in Atlanta.
Less expectation, so better quality of life. You're an alum, so you're not going to be held like they will give you more grace than they give you at Auburn. And you're not, I mean, you are competing with Georgia kind of, but you're not really competing with Georgia, maybe from a recruiting perspective.
With Georgia in the same way that Auburn is expected to
compete with Alabama and LSU and Florida and everybody else there. So to me, and not that Brent Key is underpaid by any means, but like, is the extra maybe $3 million a year, worth everything that was just mentioned? I mean, it is a better job if both were open, but like for Brent Key, maybe that's a better way to ask the question. For Brent Key, how much better is the Auburn job than Georgia Tech? Like, I wouldn't say it's better.
Yeah.
Now, LSU, I would say is. Florida, I would say is, right? Like, those would be ones that Florida and LSU, I'd even have a little bit of hesitancy just because he is an alum. But I don't think it's that much. I don't think he would leave. So
what if Clemson implodes and then all of a sudden Dabo needs a new job? You think he would go to Auburn?
Yes. That'd be wild, though, as an Alabama guy.
Yeah, that's the graduate from Bama, go to Clemson again to build Auburn.
The chance to get in the SEC, would Auburn want him? He'd have to change his entire philosophy of the way that he recruits and views the portal and NIL and everything else, because Auburn is obviously very, very bought into that. Listen, I've had talks with people at Clemson that they just are not. I mean, I know this is an SEC show, but like Clemson is just not playing the game. Like they are not playing. Now they pay their players, but like they are not playing the game of, we will outbid people for you. They just won't do it. Like like Dabo absolutely refuses. And I've got that on. I'm not trying to be like the massive source guy, but like I know that for a fact beyond a shadow of a doubt. Clemson is not playing the game right now. Auburn has always played the game.
Always.
like well before there was a game to be played, they were playing the game. And so would a guy like Dabo completely change his mindset? Because love him or hate him, like you got to at least respect, like, no, he wants to build a program his way. And he is even to his own detriment, he is very locked in on that. And so would Auburn even entertain that idea?
Would anybody entertain that outside of Clemson? And so then if that's the case, Dabo should probably be very careful about some of the things that he says. If the only person that's going to let him play the game the way that he wants to play it is the program he's already at.
It feels like Dabo's pretty close to a TV career. It just, you can't have everything built in-house, building up towards this season, and then come out 3-5 looking flat. Yeah, because nobody's going to want you if you're not, playing the game like they are. So I think Dabo's on ACC huddle at night in about a year or two.
Who you got, Allie? Who are they hiring?
This is, I think
What about Jimbo?
So I've seen that name floated, which would definitely be interesting. Is he, we've heard he's interested in hopping back in. I think that would be a nice little redemption story. I think Auburn alumni are absolutely boosters willing to pay whatever it takes to make things happen, which that's the interesting thing about this Auburn job is that, we say it's the fourth best job, which I agree with that statement, but it's not the fourth best in terms of money. They will spend like drunk sailors on whatever it is that you ask them to spend money on, whether that's recruits, whether that's coaching, whether that's your staff, whatever it is, Auburn is willing to put the bill, which does make them intriguing, I think, to names that maybe wouldn't otherwise be intrigued. But you do have such a hard path at Auburn. And I think that they expect 10-win seasons. I don't think that they necessarily expect an SEC championship consistently. I think they want to beat Bama once every 4 years. And I think they want to win 10 games. And if they can do that, you can stick around there, which I think is a little bit different than the LSU job, the Penn State job, the Florida job. Just beating your rival, your biggest rival, every 4 years and winning 10 games won't be enough at those places. So I don't know, but I think Summerall makes the most sense, which is probably why it won't happen because it's the most logical answer there. But this is the wrong year for Auburn to come open. And waiting to see, I mean, maybe they're the first ones that make the hire because their hire is obvious and the ones that are above them aren't going to fight tooth and nail for Summerall. But these other programs are in a precarious spot because so at least Florida and LSU, we think both want Lane. Even if he leaves Ole Miss, only one of them's getting that. So then.
Yeah, and he leaves Ole Miss. Is Ole Miss a better job than Auburn? I mean,
right.
on its face, probably not.
The dominoes are going to start to fall. So if you think Summerall might be your guy, I would say it's the absolute best case scenario for them to jump first. Because eventually you're left with the crumbs,
I think the John Gruden stuff is pretty real too. I think he's going to come coach one of these SEC schools. I thought it might be Arkansas. Maybe he could end up at Auburn too. I don't know. I do think
that's going to be like Urban Meyer in the NFL.
Yeah. I'm not sure it'll work, but I do think he'll get a job.
Yeah, I want to see it.
It'll work, but I want to watch it. I hope we get a reality show based on it, please. That would be wonderful. But I don't know. My advice to Auburn would be to strike first, because if you end up having to pick last, you're not going to like what your options are, I don't think.
Yeah.
So. All right. Well, we did have some football games that actually were played this past weekend that we can talk about. That Oklahoma-Tennessee game was back and forth. This kind of solidified that Tennessee is out of the playoff hunt, but Oklahoma isn't. And for a team that started out where you've been a Mateer fan from the jump, Will, so I will give you that. But I don't know that we were fully sold on this Oklahoma team at the beginning, but they're holding their own now. And can they run the table and make the playoffs?
It's going to be really tricky. I mean, because in the preseason, I thought 9-3 with Oklahoma's schedule would be good enough, given how many teams that they were going to have to play. I don't think I'm convinced of that anymore because now all of a sudden their best win is Tennessee. Right. So you're going to have to go grab this win in Tuscaloosa next week if they want to make that push. Now, could they do it? They totally could because, they found a running game against Tennessee, which we hadn't seen all year, and that really helped them because Mateer didn't even do anything special. But the running game was really good. And if Tate Sandell keeps making 50-yarders in the Speedo, they can beat anybody. So I do think Oklahoma, they have to win this Alabama game. They have to. And it's going to be hard. They'll probably be like a touchdown underdog. But that's really the game because then they close with Missouri and LSU, both at home. They can take both of them, especially if they are in a do or die spot. So it comes down to this game from Tuscaloosa. It'll be hard, but it's definitely not impossible.
I do want to talk about the kicker's pants for 1 second. The amount of tweets I saw on X that were saying things like, this probably helps him with his knee flexibility and whatever. Everybody's making fun of him, but I'm sure there's some logic behind it. Listen. As the parent of a 15-year-old boy who likes to wear his pants like this on the football field, and the wife of a kicker, there is absolutely no rhyme or reason to it from a mechanic standpoint. They think it looks cool. I cannot tell you that's this teenage boy style right now is short shorts and then their underwear hang down on the bottom of it. The amount of times I have to be like, I don't want to see your underwear. I don't understand this. It's literally the reverse of when we were younger and everybody would house their pants and you would see the top part of it. Now the trend is the reverse. So for all of you out there defending, saying, it's to help his mechanics. No, it's not. He thinks it looks cool. And they're not going to call a flag on it, whatever. But there is technically still a rule that you are supposed to cover your knees. It's just not enforced. Yeah. Not enforced from high school on up. But TJ, pants aside,
that's how I wear mine. That's how I wear mine too. So it's all good.
Great. Yes. Your children are mortified at that, but it's fine. Okay. Pants aside, can Oklahoma run the table?
I don't think they can run the table, but they do look different right now. And I think 9-3 might still get them in. we'll talk about the playoff and what we kind of expect there. But I'll tell you, going to Bryant-Denny is never easy for anyone. And they're playing well enough. I know that South Carolina game was a little bit weird, but Alabama has LSU this week. And I think there's a good chance that Oklahoma is able to slow them down defensively. If they win that one, I kind of like Oklahoma to make it. Mm-hmm. I do think they beat Missouri. Prbula he's not going to be back by then, right?
No, he's done. Yeah, he's done.
Officially done. So I think they beat Missouri. That game's at home. And then I think they beat LSU on the last Saturday of the year. And so even if they lose close to, I think the bigger question is if they lose close. I wrote the question for this. I think the bigger question is if they lose close to Alabama, can they still get in? Because I don't know that I have the confidence they can beat Bama. I think it sets up well for them getting a bye while Alabama has to play a very physical LSU team. That's back-to-back tough games, even though they're both at home for Bama. And we all kind of thought well, nobody's going to go undefeated in the SEC. So Bama's going to drop one of their last couple of games. This is their last chance to drop one. I don't think they're losing at Auburn. And so, and I don't really think LSU is going to beat them either. We'll talk about that game later. So I think it's starting to set up well for Oklahoma. Their schedule is still ridiculous, but there are some breaks. You're playing a coachless team against LSU. You're playing a quarterbackless team against Missouri. And then you're playing a team against Bama that is going to have to get super, super high for this LSU game. I think it sets up well, and I'm not trying to minimize their schedule at all, but I think they've got an okay chance. I think their playoff odds right now, in my mind, not according to Vegas, are 60-40 no. Because I think 9-3 might still get them in.
Mm-hmm. Do they pass the eye test for you? I don't know. I think this is a good but not great Oklahoma team. And are we, we've commented on teams getting into the playoffs in the past that are oh, this team isn't even good. They're going to get bounced. This is stupid. There's better teams. Does Oklahoma fit that description this year? Or maybe that changes if they were to figure out beating Alabama?
I think for right now, you can probably say it just because the offense, they're not winning games offensively, really. They're winning games defensively and with field goals. So obviously, no one's going to see that and be like, this team is unbelievable. Please give me more of them. Yeah. But as long as you're winning games, you're winning games. So I think as Mateer keeps getting healthier, as the running game continues to develop, you could see him get flashier, right? Because if all of a sudden these running backs are a threat, then you'll see some more deep shots to guys like Burks, Titania, like we saw a million in that Michigan and Auburn game. So I think they could get more flashy. They're definitely developing. We're seeing a lot of growth from that team, especially offensively. So right now, eye test is no, but obviously that changes pretty quickly if they go put up 35 on Bama.
Well, I'll tell you. Go ahead, TJ.
Well, I was going to say, I think we're going to find out tomorrow night because the committee has said all these things about strength of schedule and the committee sucks so bad, right? Not even as a jaded FSU fan, but just the way that they change their narrative from week to week, where eye test matters this week and then resume matters this week and then strength of schedule matters this week and then conference championships matter. It sucks so bad. Obviously, Allie, I know we're big proponents of what the BCS was because at least it was formulaic and we could comprehend who deserved what. But I think tomorrow night's important for that. Where are they ranked tomorrow night? Because if they're ranked 12th, right? Where are they in the AP right now? Maybe that's a good question.
I think they're 12 and 13.
Yeah. So if they're ranked 12th and they lose to the number 5 team in the country in Alabama or 3 or 5 or wherever Bama is in the playoff committee by 3 points, they shouldn't drop it all. The number 12 team should lose to the number 3 team by 3 points. That's a good, I hate to say this because this is not the way that I was raised, but a good loss is you're supposed to lose to the number 3 team in the country or number 5 team, whatever, by 3, losing to them by 3 points on their home field is a good loss. They shouldn't be dropped at all. If they lose that game, maybe a spot or 2. And then if they beat Missouri and LSU the last 2 weeks, I think they're getting in. Yeah. Does a 9-3, and again, maybe this is bleeding into the next conversation, but does a 9-3 SEC team deserve to be in over a 10-2 Big Ten team or a 10-2 Notre Dame or a 10-2 Miami? I think so. When you look at their strength of schedule based on what now, do I really think that? I don't know. My opinion doesn't matter, but based on what the committee has said, that strength of schedule is going to be factored more. Based on the fact that Mateer was hurt and banged up, and clearly a big part of the reason that they dropped a couple of games because he just didn't look right. So you ask about eye test. Yeah, they look terrible in the midpoint of the season, but if they go on to look better at the end of the season, then yeah, they deserve to be in because they have passed the eye test. They have rebounded after his injury. I think that his injury almost helps them some because they might have lost to Texas anyway, even if he was fully healthy. And so their injury almost does help them because they'll say, oh, well, he was hurt during those games. And so we're not going to hold it against them as much.
Yeah. I will tell you, the mom in me panicked on Saturday when I watched footage of him walking through into the stadium before the game and he's high-fiving people. And I
I mean, who was that? Like someone grabbed his thumb. You saw that clip too? Like they grabbed his thumb and he winced.
Yes, like
in jail.
Yes, you should be in jail, but also like, please, why? Why are you doing that? Just walk through the middle and do
the
Yeah, I don't know. That was a lot. We do have a few comments on the side that I think are interesting. Heard some fake news. Sandell would cut off a piece of his pants every time they made a field goal, and that's how they got so short. I love that. We should stick with that story. How important is it for Auburn to retain DJ Durkin once the coaching hire is made? I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I personally think DJ Durkin is the scum of the earth based on personal experience with him. And I am sure that the players that play for him feel exactly the same way. But that aside, I don't ever like to tell a head coach who they should retain. I think there are coaches that make sense for different staffs to retain. I would love for Florida to retain Billy Gonzalez, whoever they happen to hire, but I am never a proponent of telling someone they have to retain somebody that's on their staff, but certainly not him.
Yeah, for the Durkin thing, like I definitely agree with you on a personal level, and he's got a little bit of Brian Kelly in him, not for a good reason. But if they don't get who they want, he might not be a bad guy to just hire.
Yeah,
because I mean the defense is really good. Like what he's in charge of is what's right about the team. But then that's the question: like, do you want to deal with this guy really running your program, given who we know that he is?
Yeah, I don't know. Definitely an interesting thing.
All right, sure. I wasn't going to bring this up, but the tweet I just sent you, somebody tweeted this morning, we went exactly 1 week without having an SEC head coach that killed a kid. So Brian Kelly out, DJ Durkin, the new guy at Auburn.
The new guy. Oh my gosh. Terrible.
Don't kill me for it. Well, you probably guys don't coach in the SEC, so you won't. But yeah, you probably. Let's move on from that before I get in trouble.
Yes. Okay. Moving on. We are going to talk about how many SEC teams do get in the college football playoff. TJ, you were alluding to this. All of you also, I have a cough drop in my mouth because I'm very sick. So
it's a Zen. She's lying.
I apologize for that. I put it to my mouth to like rip it open. I was like, oh, I'm on camera. Whoops.
It's a nicotine pouch.
But it is not a nicotine pouch. It is a Mucinex sore throat cough lozenge. But anyway.
That's what I say too.
Yeah. Sore throat. Another Zen, please.
All right. So this has been a discussion all season long. And now that we're getting, towards decision times, I guess, how many SEC teams do we get in?
Yes, when I was going through, I feel pretty comfortable saying A&M, Bama, and Ole Miss right now, barring a nightmare, because I think that even if Ole Miss drops one, they're okay. I don't see A&M losing more than 2, and they should be fine. Bama shouldn't drop more than 1. What I was kind of looking at, I almost wonder if this comes down to the Big 12 and really this game this weekend, Texas Tech versus BYU, because if BYU wins that game, I think the Big 12 is a 1-bid conference because then Tech will have 2 losses already. If Texas Tech wins, then BYU each have 1 loss. They'll play again in the conference championship game, and you can't punish the loser of that. So having 1 more spot is big for the SEC. Georgia-wise, they're whistling by the graveyard every single week, and they still have to play at Mississippi State, Texas, and Georgia Tech. If they lose 1, then Ole Miss maybe loses 1 more. I'm going to be all over the place here, but they have a head-to-head over Ole Miss if they have the same records. Who knows what happens there? Texas will have to win out. I don't think that they do. We talked about Oklahoma already. For Vanderbilt, 10-2, I think should be good enough, based on their all-in performance, because that'd be a win over Missouri, maybe a win over LSU before I feel like went off the rails, and then they win out a good Tennessee team. 10-2 Vanderbilt, they're not going to have the logo pedigree, but I think they should be good enough for an at-large bid based on what we see with Notre Dame or, how many teams from the Big Ten get. I think the ACC is probably getting 2 bids, but it's crowded. It's really crowded.
I'll push back there. I don't know that the ACC is getting 2 bids since Georgia Tech lost this weekend.
I mean, I think I looked at it like
Georgia Tech, Louisville, Miami has 2 losses, but Georgia Tech, Louisville, and Virginia all have a loss. And so I'm not confident. Georgia Tech still has to play at Georgia or against Georgia on a neutral site in Atlanta, in the dome, which is stupid. And college football games should happen on home campuses, but I digress. And then obviously, I mean, Louisville still has to play Clemson and at SMU. Virginia could run the table, but I think I like them the least in an ACC championship. And I don't think the same grace is going to be shown to the ACC loser that maybe the Big 12 loser is getting, because it's not a rematch. So I'm not confident the ACC is a 2-bid league. Now, again, we'll find out tonight or tomorrow night when the rankings come out. Like if Miami's still ranked fairly high, which I don't think they will, but if they're around 15 and they go 4-0 down the stretch, I think they could potentially sneak in at 10-2. I think that's like kind of unlikely, but
possible. They'd be over Notre Dame, wouldn't they? If they're both 10-2, they'd have to be.
Great question. I don't know. I think head-to-head matters, but like if head-to-head should matter. I put all the Miami hate aside. But are you seriously telling me, I don't mean that aggressively toward you, but are you seriously telling me that when we get to the end of the year, we don't think Notre Dame is a better team? Like I think I agree with you. Results get minimized a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe deservedly so, maybe not, because the game should matter. Yeah. But like if Miami limps into the postseason and Notre Dame goes on a tear here at the end, I think that's, I mean, I saw Dennis report this morning. She thinks Notre Dame gets ranked ahead of Miami this week. And I don't necessarily disagree with that. But again, I do think the games matter. And so did Miami's loss this weekend. And if Miami drops one more, I mean, that's Notre Dame's best loss. I guess A&M is probably their best loss. But what does Notre Dame have if Miami finishes 9-3? That's a good question. Is Notre Dame as solid in as we think?
I don't think they should be. I mean, I think the general idea of a 10-2 Notre Dame being left out of this playoff, given what we've seen, is a long shot. But I mean, yeah, because right now their best win is that home game against USC. But that could easily become meaningless.
Yeah.
If USC drops, one, I think they still play Oregon, does USC, so they could lose one more also. Notre Dame, their last game, they got to go to Stanford. We've seen some teams lose at Stanford this year. So it'll be close. I do think you're totally right about Notre Dame being a better team than Miami if they both close out undefeated here. But I don't. It's so tricky with this committee. Like, are they really going to set a precedent that head-to-head doesn't matter and put in Notre Dame, or they're going to pick a team that everybody thinks is worse and go Miami? So that's really tricky. But this is not all about the SEC. So sorry.
Well, those impact this. I would say. I think. I just can't. I mean, if Texas wins out, they're in. There's no doubt.
Yes.
So, but I can't see them beating Georgia and A&M. It'll happen now that I just said that. But if Texas wins out, they're in. And I think, but like Georgia would still be 10-2. I mean, unless they were to drop to Georgia Tech or something stupid late. So what the scenario?
Georgia ahead.
What happens? Say what?
I was just saying, because if Texas wins out and they have 2 losses, so does Georgia. Texas has the head-to-head, assuming Georgia.
Yeah, but if they both only have 2 losses, they're both going.
I think they're probably, but also like you're quickly running out of spots based on what happens elsewhere with Notre Dame, with the Big 12, with the ACC.
But don't you take a 10-2 Georgia team or a 10-2 Texas team over both Notre Dame and Miami?
I would over Miami for sure. Notre Dame would be the question mark, I think. I think that would be I would put Georgia or Texas over Notre Dame. But again, we were just told that which both of them have better strength of schedules overall, but we were just told that good losses wouldn't matter. And so losing to A&M is different than losing on the road in the swamp. Like, I don't think Florida is a terrible roster, but like, that's not a good loss for Texas. So I think that is tricky. I think that's like the entire season we have sat here and thought that Texas was dog crap. Now, if they beat A&M and Georgia at the end of the year, we're not going to think that.
Right.
But I think that's a tricky situation that you get into. And you're starting to, again, you're just running out of spots because there's going to be a group of, going to be at least one ACC, there's going to be at least one Big 12. We think that Notre Dame probably brings somebody in there. There's going to be, you're going to have Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon for sure. You're going to have the SEC teams that we mentioned. So how many spots are left? What if Vandy goes 10-2? Like, there's a chance that, if Vandy, Georgia, and Texas all go 10-2, somebody's getting left out, and it's probably going to be Vandy because they lost head-to-head to Texas. But I think there's a chance of that.
Yeah.
This is why I feel bad saying it, but like I don't love the Group of 5 auto bid, because like I get it, like giving everybody a chance, but like the Group of 5 team is not playing for the championship. They're not going to make that push through it. So then I think in a year like this, also you're going to see just whatever, like Memphis or USF or North Texas get in, and then all of a sudden you've got a Texas or a Georgia team likely who's sitting out there, just like we are significantly better than this team, but we have to go play in the Pop-Tart Bowl because we have to get these guys a spot to lose in the first round.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor too.
I just think that's also why this playoff is too large. Like if we can sit here and say, well, we know this team's going to get in, but it's really just a consolation prize because we know that they're not going to make it out of, let's say, the second round. What the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement that you don't like either give them their own playoff or just say, hey, it's the top 12 teams. We're not doing any auto bids. I'd be completely fine with that. Yeah, and if they qualify for one of those top 12 teams, like if USF would have gone 11-1, I think they'd be a top 12 team in the country, which is fine if they earn it. Now you get into the point of, would the voters just vote them a little bit lower because they know that, which again is why I don't like a committee.
Right.
But I don't like the auto bid either. However, the reason we have the playoff that these TV corporations want, which none of us or necessarily asked for anyway, is because you had to have buy-in from the other 6 like you had to take all 10 conferences, so you had to throw them a bone, right? Like the other 6 conferences, the group of 6 would not have voted on this and approved it had you not thrown them the bone of the automatic qualifier. So it was a necessary evil, but it's not necessarily what's best for the sport. Like the projection right now is that USF would play at Ole Miss. I like USF. Allie and I both live in Tampa. We would be cheering for USF for differing reasons, but I don't need to see that game, you know. And even if they got the upset somehow, then they got to go play Georgia the next week, or A&M the next week, or Bama or something. Like, just give me the 12 best teams and roll with it if that's what we're gonna do. So, but I agree with you. Like, they're gonna cost somebody a spot. And then we talked about Oklahoma at 9-3. So, okay. All this said, my final number is the 3. I think Georgia is pretty close to a lock. I don't know that I would have them as a lock, but I've got the SEC getting 4 teams in right now with a strong possibility of 5. I don't think I think there aren't enough spots for them to get more than that. Like the Big Ten's going to get 3 unless crazy chaos happens down the stretch. The Big Ten's going to get 3. The group of 5 is going to get 1. The ACC and the Big 12 are going to get 2. There's 6. Like there's 6 that I think are spoken for. Notre Dame's the biggest question. I think Notre Dame could be your 7th, and then I think the SEC gets 5. And that's if the Big 12 doesn't steal another one. That's if, the ACC doesn't steal another one, which I really don't think they will. But I would be shocked if the SEC got less than 4. I would be shocked if they got more than 5. So I think it's 4 or 5. 6 would be, I don't really see a scenario where they get 6. I think that's just too many because there are other spots that are already kind of taken up. 4 or 5 is my number. 4.5 is my final answer.
4.5. I actually agree with TJ. I think that they sure get 4. They may get 5. I don't think they get more than that. I think we're seeing, I still think the SEC is the most dominant conference, but I think that there's more parity this year than we've ever seen. And we'll probably say that each year, moving forward, because this is how NIL affects college football. But I don't feel like there's just so many dominant teams that it's like, oh, damn, you have to put in all 6 or it's just an injustice to the sport. I think that there's a lot more parity than that.
Yeah, I think I agree with probably the 4 number. Because I think we had the 3 at the top, and then probably just the winner of Georgia, Texas, assuming Georgia doesn't lose another one. So I'll probably say 4.
which, it's a good chunk of the playoff teams right there, for sure.
I hope it's 4 just so I can hear Greg Sankey cry about it. How they deserved a 5th over, we really needed that team seeded 11th that we knew couldn't win it, but by George, we needed a man.
Well, I do think we can say pretty confidently that whichever team of the SEC is the first one out is probably better than both ACC schools, the group of 5, and one of the Big 12 schools at least. So, I mean, that'll definitely be a point.
That's why Sankey will complain, because that is the
big question would be if Notre Dame got in. Mm-hmm. I mean, Notre Dame lost to, the A&M by 1. So, are you super – and Notre Dame beat Georgia last year. I know it was with the backup quarterback, but we all have watched Beck this year too. So, I don't know that would have mattered. But if Notre Dame is the one that gets that final spot, which they very well may, I would probably pick them to get it at this point. I think their brand is – I think it's the biggest brand in college football. And so I think that matters, and the viewership matters to these people. And so if Notre Dame gets it, I have a hard time feeling bad for Sankey for the 5th best SEC team not getting in. If you couldn't finish in the top 4 of your conference, I don't necessarily know that I believe in you as a college football playoff team. And so if that's what ends up happening.
The argument to that, though, is if you can't finish in the top 4 in the SEC, but you could finish number 1 in several other conferences. And that's
undefeated in hypothetical matchups. For sure. But I don't know. What's your confidence level after watching? So say Georgia's that 5th team or Texas is that 5th. Let's go Texas, because I think Georgia's a little bit more of a lock. Are you supremely confident that Texas could go out and beat Notre Dame right now head to head? Texas' strength of schedule is definitely better.
Yeah.
But are you that sure that Texas?
I wouldn't call it supremely confident, but
I think Notre Dame would be. I think Notre Dame would be favored on a neutral field right now. I'm not saying they win for sure, but I do think Notre Dame would be favored. Now, Texas beats Georgia, then we've got a little bit different of a conversation. But I don't think. Yeah, I think I'd roll with Notre Dame in that, and I think the committee will too.
Probably because if it turns out let's say Vandy goes 10-2, Oklahoma loses games, 10-2 Notre Dame versus Vanderbilt, we all know how that's going to go. That's a Notre Dame lean.
Right.
I do think the brand matters. And people will look at, the 5th best team in the SEC and say, you didn't finish top 4 in your conference, you can't get in there. I agree with what Allie said, but I think probably just politics wise, they can't afford to put in a 10-2 Vanderbilt team over Notre Dame with the same record.
Yeah. Well, we get to find out on Tuesday how many teams get into the very first college football playoff poll. How many? Where is everybody going to be ranked?
In my fake hypothetical rankings, I said A&M at 2, Bama at 4, Georgia 7, Ole Miss 8, Oklahoma 10, Texas and Vandy in the high teens, and then Missouri out in the 20s. But I don't think I'm not worried about Missouri. But those teams that we talked about, I had 5 that were currently in the top 12, which obviously some of them will lose, and then Texas and Vandy outside looking in.
TJ, what you got? How many teams are in let's say the top 16?
Yeah, I honestly think it very much mirrors the AP poll, which people say preseason rankings don't matter. And then the AP poll, has a preseason ranking and then bases all their subsequent rankings on their hypothetical thoughts from the preseason. I think it very much it mirrors that. I think you're probably A&M and Bama 3 and 4. Maybe you put A&M at 2, but I don't know. That would be maybe slight variance. I think Georgia, Ole Miss right behind them in that 5 to. I might have Ole Miss ahead of Oregon, so maybe 5 and 6. The SEC doesn't get the top 2, but then gets the next 4. That wouldn't surprise me at all. Ole Miss, to me, Ole Miss has been more impressive than Oregon. Oregon's best win is against a team that fired their coach 2 weeks later. Oklahoma around 13-ish. I want to see a little bit more for them. Maybe that's a little bit of projecting because I think they lose this weekend, which is, again, not necessarily what they're supposed to do. And then, Vandy, mid to low teens, I think. One ahead of Vandy.
Okay.
So Texas 15, Vandy 16, something like that. Maybe Vandy a little bit lower than that just because they don't have the brand. And I also think the committee does a little bit better job of actually watching games. I will give them a little bit of credit, I guess, and not just crap on the committee the entire show. That Vandy game was a 3-point loss. It wasn't a 3-point loss, right? Like they were dominated for 75% of that game and then had a nice comeback once Texas took their foot off the gas in a game that, though the onside kick was close, like they never had a chance to win that game. And then, yeah, maybe they throw a bone to Missouri. I think a lot of this is political. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see Missouri ranked so that they can use that for some wins that some of the teams ahead of them have. But they'll lose this weekend to be out of it, so it won't matter.
So you mentioned the brand. How big of a factor do you think that actually is? I mean, they tell us it's not, right? Like that's not something that they're factoring in. But how much of it do you think really does depend on how this is going to sell seats, how this is going to come across nationally, what fan base is going to be enraged or super happy or whatever?
I think it is important from a macro perspective. From a micro game to game, less. From a macro perspective, when you zoom way out, it's very important because, again, all of the rankings that we've seen so far, they are going to base the rankings on the top 10 wins, the top 25 wins, losses against close teams. And all of that was based on preseason projections and the brands that were ranked highly to start. Yeah. And so to me, it's not thought about like nobody. Well, unless you go tinfoil hat and say conspiracy at the end of the year, hey, we want Notre Dame in because it's better ratings and stuff, which I do think that happens just because ESPN owns all of it. But from a week to week perspective, less. But there is no way that you can remove the bias in your brain of Texas's logo and Vandy's logo. Like there's just no way you can do that. And so, if those teams had played to a tie, which ties aren't a thing in college football anymore, they would rank Texas ahead because of their brand and their inherent biases of having Arch Manning and that Longhorn logo on the side of their helmet. So week to week maybe doesn't matter as much, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it does matter, and it will be part of why certain teams are ranked in certain places. Maybe not tomorrow night, but through the course of the next 5-6 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, brand definitely, because like hypothetical playoff matchup, let's say Georgia Tech makes it in, and the committee is effectively picking between, okay, we can do Texas or Vandy. Like Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt, I would watch the hell out of that game personally, but that's not going to move the needle. Versus winning with the most of America, like you get Texas in there, you'll get to see them probably beat up a non-ACC team. That's what people are going to generally watch. Yeah. So the brand I think is going to impact. That's why I think Notre Dame gets in. And yeah, if Texas and Vandy end with the same record, obviously, aside from just head-to-head, that's a lean to Texas, the bigger brand, the bigger name, things like that.
These are all just arguments to back up my move back to the BCS campaign that I'm going to be launching. But so, TJ, this is an interesting question for you because this is something we've seen with your team, Florida State, in the past. But do you think that this year's committee is going to use what comes out tomorrow night as their blueprint moving forward? Or do we think that each week's rankings are going to be done completely independently and they're not going to build off of or whatever what they had done the previous week? We did see with Florida State, a couple of years ago, we're following this pattern. We think that there's a rhyme or reason to how we're doing these. And then the ending poll ended up having nothing to do with what they had done in previous weeks. Is each week independent of each other or are they all linked?
No, I have no confidence that the committee can maintain consistency, which I think is the biggest question, like to frame it like as all kind of a simple question back to you, like back to me. I have no confidence they can do that. Now, I would love if they did, but I think Florida State fans, their biggest gripe 2 years ago was the fact that the committee did continue to rank them high week after week and say that the quarterback injury doesn't matter. They're finding a way to win games. If they had dropped Florida State after Jordan Travis got injured and said like, look, they're just not as good of a team without him. They're seventh now. I think Florida State fans would have put in their mind like, okay, well, there's 3 weeks to go. We understand we're not getting in unless some kind of crazy chaos happens. We agree. We may not like it, but we agree we're not as good of a team without him. Nobody would have argued differently. It was the fact that they were told for 3 or 4 weeks, yep, they're still finding a way. They're doing like the backup actually went in and they scored a lot of points or whatever. They went in after the game against UF. They went in and found a way to win in the swamp with a backup quarterback. They deserve credit for that, and we're not dropping them down. And then on the final rankings to come out and them say, yeah, they're just not the same team without Jordan Travis. So until we see the committee apply, which they did the same thing last year, it wasn't as drastic, and there were 12 teams instead of 4, which obviously FSU gets in with 12 teams. Like, they're not dropping them to 13th. But I do think that, they have never, in the 11 years they've been doing this, they have never showed any kind of idiom of consistency. And it's almost like there's this built-in shield where they can pick their rankings. And then again, because we don't know really what goes into it, we can focus on strength of schedule this week. We can focus on eye test this week. We can focus on resume this week. And we can focus on injury this week or whatever's happened. And so I think that is, no, there's no chance that I expect the committee to be consistent. And what we see tomorrow night, although we've spent plenty of time talking about it, what we see tomorrow night, to me, has no impact on what we'll see, the day after conference championship Saturday. I think they'll do ultimately what they want. And none of these rankings over these next few weeks even really matter that much, though we will obsess about them, in an insane way.
Well, there is still lots more football to be played, including a game that used to kind of determine who was going to the SEC championship game out of the West, and that's LSU, Bama. I mean, the national championship ran through this game for years and years, and it doesn't necessarily have quite the fanfare, but LSU could play spoiler, right? I mean, can LSU upset the tide? Do they have the horses to pull off a miracle, Will?
They definitely have the horses. So the line for this game is 10.5. Alabama's not 10 points better than LSU is. But the question is just, does LSU roll over and play till the clock runs out? I think with how much came out about Brian Kelly and how much toxicity there was, it feels like there's probably going to be some juice. I'm not reporting this, but there's probably some juice at LSU. There's probably okay, the bad man is gone. Like, let's go play some football now. Because that defense still has the playmakers that we were all ogling over in the beginning of the year. Like, they still have a lot of great talent defensively where they can maybe force some turnovers and do great. Their last 2 weeks, though, giving up 31 and 49 to Vandy and A&M. I mean, they quit against A&M in the second half. But both those teams were really good.
Yeah.
And, granted, so was Bama. But with the new juice and fresh start, does that defense get some swagger back? Now, offensively, I'm still pretty worried because I don't think Nussmeier's very good. I think he's probably still kind of beat up. But they did find a decent bit of running game against A&M, and that can always open up the passing game. So I think LSU is still a very good team. That roster is still what it is. I think if I had to guess, I'd say they do come out swinging and wake up, maybe play this game close. We'll make our picks later, but I do think that LSU can keep this close because Bama is not 10 or 11 points better than LSU is, just straight up.
TJ, how much is the emotion going to play into this game? And it is true that sometimes when you fire your coach, you get a little bounce back for the guys that are left behind. Is that something we're going to see on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And we saw that in the cocktail party, right? Like, Florida looked really good. Now, they played with intensity in a lot of weeks, and LSU is in a very similar situation where they're coming off a bye week, so is Bama, but just like Florida and Georgia were last week. So, yeah, I mean, it would not surprise me at all if LSU kept this close. I just think from Florida, I don't think we saw Florida quit, right? I just think LSU did quit in that A&M game. But to be fair, I thought Florida State quit against Stanford. And then they came out and scored 40-something points against, a top 25 ranked defense in Wake Forest. Now, Wake Forest is not Alabama, and so I'm not trying to play that game. But I do think that teams can come back for quitting. Like, there's quitting on the season, and then they're just hanging your head and saying, hey, we ain't going to win this game anyway, so who cares? Right. And so I do think you see LSU kind of recharged. And, I mean, these guys are still playing for – I don't know that playing for the logo on your chest is as much of a thing as it was 15 years ago, but I do think you're playing for NIL deals next year. Yeah. You're playing for the pros. You're playing to prove that it really was the bad man. The thumbnail is going to say the bad man is gone for sure. But I do think, which is hilarious by Will. So I do think they'll play hard. I just think their talent is not, they're very talented, but their talent's not enough to upset Alabama in Bryant-Denny. So I'll pick Bama once we get to it. But I think you do see them play as well as they can for sure.
All right. Will Alabama wins because they did what?
I mean, kept putting pressure on Nussmeier and kept making it impossible for LSU to really find much of a pulse in the passing game. We've seen him get beat up week in and week out. I think Bama does have the horses to go do that on the defensive line. So they just need to keep disrupting Nussmeier. I mean, just keep hitting him and I don't want to say hurting him, but just like, he hasn't been 100% all year because of the pressure that's been put on him. So if they just keep hitting him, keep knocking him over, because the LSU's running game, it could be fine, but it's not going to break you. So they can kind of let the running game do what it does. And then just wear down Nussmeier. So I'll go probably Bama's defensive front has to make that difference and just keep getting in Nussmeier's face.
All right, TJ, you get the reverse. If LSU wins, it's because they did what?
I think they took advantage of Bama mistakes, which there haven't been that many. They also shut down the run of Alabama, which that's kind of been their make or break point this year is if Bama runs well, they win the game easily. If they don't run well, Florida State, South Carolina, they struggle, But if their running game is working and LSU's not able to slow that down, which I don't have a lot of confidence that they can, then I think it's going to be a long day for LSU. So LSU needs to pray. I always remember back when, I think FSU had a game where they had like 6 or 7 holding calls in the first half, and Aaron Andrews asked Bobby, like, "What are you going to do to fix these holding calls?" And he goes, "Well, we're going to pray or something. I don't know what else to do." Going off the field at halftime, so LSU needs to do that and pray that Bama makes mistakes, which is atypical from this team this year, and they need to stop the run, which is atypical for LSU. So you need 2 things that have not really gone your way to start going your way, and that's why it's a tall task, I think, for them to win.
All right, Will, give me your score prediction.
I think this game could be a little lower scoring than we've seen these games in the past because, Bama's defense is really good. We've seen that happen already, and LSU's offense has been slow. LSU's defense, I do think, comes out inspired. I'll go like 27-17 Bama. I think that Bama won't quite cover. Obviously, that's because of the hook there. But I'll say a bit of a lower scoring game, 27-17 Bama, get the win at home.
All right, TJ, what you got?
I am going to throw out everything I just said and say that Bama does backdoor cover this. Bama by 14. So 28-14. I just think LSU's offense cannot do enough.
28-14. Okay, I'm actually going 21-17. I think this is going to be a lot closer than we think. And I'm kind of basing this based on the rivalry that exists here and the bad blood that happens. This is one of my favorite head-to-head matchups of the year. Maybe that's just from the generation that I'm from. I have such fond memories of it, but I think it's going to be a dogfight, and I'm kind of excited to see it.
I went to this game in 2016, and both teams were ranked, and I think Bama was number 1 in the country. And there was a moment, and I know this is at Bryant-Denny, but there was a moment where Jalen Hurts threw an interception in his own end zone, and I was sitting in that end zone, and I know the Swamp gets loud, and there's been times where Doak got loud, and I've been to, Clemson for ranked matchups and other things too. But I have never felt a place shake like it did at that moment. And so the emotion in this will be super high. It will be super fun. I long for the day that this matchup matters again because it hasn't in a few years. But this is, if I had to think of a game that doesn't involve my team that is probably my favorite in college football, it probably is this one because for so many of my formative years, I'm much younger than Allie, much older than Will, but this is the game that mattered the most in college football. Like it just did, like obviously, USC Texas was fun a couple of times, USC Notre Dame was fun a little bit before this, but man, the SEC was so good and still is so good, but it was so dominant there in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And you had Saban versus his old team and everything. Like this was the game that just meant everything. And it was the team that was going to go to the SEC championship and thus the team that was probably going to win it all. And so, I hope this soon gets back to mattering because this game, I think, meant a lot to me as, games that don't involve my team, just looking at all of college football in general. So hopefully we get a classic, not a 9-6 classic, but something closer than
that was a fun one. That was a fun one though.
It was a fun game, but I like points. So let's score touchdowns, please.
Yeah. I mean, we make the statement, it's good for college football when XYZ, but it is good for college football when Bama and LSU have these intense games. We got a couple comments about this game too. If Jam Miller's healthy, I like Bama's odds. Not only does Jam excel in the run game, but he is outstanding in pass protection. Blind Squirrel also likes how Billy Gonzalez did in his interim debut, which we haven't talked about on this show. But close is only good for horseshoes and hand grenades, right? But Billy Gonzalez did do an admirable phenomenal job. And I don't know how you felt, Will or TJ, when you guys watched it, but I didn't see us have to call a timeout coming out of a TV timeout because we didn't know what the play was going to be. I think we had the right number of men on the field every single time. The offense seemed to, I don't know, flow in a way that made sense. I did love going for it on fourth down. I don't know that I love the play call, but I love the aggressiveness. I saw improvement.
Yeah. Okay. So Sports Talk Jay, who you had on, I've had on and stuff. I'm sure a lot of people watching will know that name just because he's big here on YouTube. He did a little clip up of, he just called it Misery Loves Company because obviously Tennessee lost. That's his team. And then he basically clipped up reactions of other content creators like Zach at Locked On Auburn. He had the guy at Locked On South Carolina because they lost. And then he did yours. And he was like, Saturday was double bad for me because not only did Tennessee lose, but my favorite coach in college football is no longer I can't watch Billy Napier coach football anymore. And so obviously the whole thing was a troll. It's super sad. He showed some of your video. And you do this every week. So it's not, good, bad, and the ugly, right? Of everything. So even in a bad loss like USF that, you went over the good, although that was a pretty quick segment. So you said a lot of those things, he's like, I'm upset because even the Florida fan, they're losing games to their biggest rival and they're not even upset about it. They're happy that they got 12 or 11 men on the field and they're happy there were no penalties and they're happy that this happened and there were no false starts or whatever. He's like, so I could not even take joy in the fact that Billy Napier wasn't there. It was the most hilarious segment that I've ever seen because he was like, I'm just going to try and remember the good times, the 4 years that I got to spend with Billy Napier. It totally sounded like a breakup, like where you were trying to convince yourself that your life wasn't over. He's like, I'm going to remember the good memories. And I'm depressed that we lost Oklahoma, but I might be even more depressed that I no longer get to watch Billy Napier coach Florida. So anyway, Will, for some serious conversation, you can talk about the Florida game too, but that's all I got.
I mean, I thought it was a great effort. There were still a few spots coaching wise where I thought were just kind of misses. I mean, we had Miles Graham covering Zachariah Branch and man on a long third down. I thought the 4th and short call, it was a good decision. They wanted to run Lagway all day, and then they go shotgun handoff in that. I thought that was not good. Yeah. But I mean, the biggest thing for me in that Florida game was if Lagway hits Hawkins late in the second quarter, that's 17-7.5. And the no catch for JMS doesn't matter. You got to hit that throw. And I think it was Trey Wilson who was wide open at the 52. It was just missed opportunities. And whether it was coaching, whether it was execution, you just kind of saw Florida still being 1 or 2 plays short of being able to get that done. So Saturday night was really, really hard for me. But available to use just time of reflection to just kind of be like, all right, it was a good effort. It was kind of what I thought we were going to get, just 1 or 2 plays short.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love watching Sports Talk Jay's videos. Always entertaining. He is always entertaining. Yeah. I mean, a loss is a loss. And so I don't want to come on here and say moral victories. Yay. I don't. But Florida played well with the number 5 team in the country, down 3 running backs, multiple wide receivers, multiple defensive players. They looked more functional than they have in the past. Nobody gave up. I thought Billy Gonzalez showed the appropriate amount of fire. They would pan to him during a timeout and he would be ripping them in the huddle. And I need to see that. I don't want to see the monotone, you guys are trying really hard and I'm very proud of this effort. I would like you to please MF someone for me and see if you can get them to pull something else out. And I thought that his press conference was really good too. We're actually getting press conferences where we're being told things, or we're being told yeah, this is terrible. I don't want to lose. I know you guys don't want to lose. The winning is the goal here, not just effort. And I fully appreciate that. I think that Florida every game that's left on the schedule is winnable. Obviously, Ole Miss is the least winnable out of those, but I still think that it is a winnable game. I think Florida probably ends up bowl eligible, which I think is a good thing. You get those extra practices. I think that they absolutely can beat Kentucky this weekend and get Billy G that first win. I love the amount of times that they looked at Trey Wilson, and we talked about this on the show, how Billy Gonzalez said they asked him what he was going to do differently, and he said he really wanted to spread the ball around to his playmakers. Now, Dallas Wilson was out halfway through the game. You didn't have VB3, so maybe it's not that he was always going to be looking for Trey Wilson. It's just that's what he was left with. But Wilson almost doubled his production for the year in this one game. And he looked ready when they threw him the ball. They didn't just ask him to run laps behind the line of scrimmage, essentially. And he made the most of his time. You saw him crying after the game, which I thought was really interesting too, because I think there's more buy-in from him than we realized. And I think that maybe there was something between him and Coach Napier, and he didn't feel like Napier supported him or wanted him to succeed, or I don't know what, but Billy G clearly wants him to and trusts him because he fed him, and the results were positive there.
Yeah, on the Trey Wilson thing, I kind of want to parlay that into the video of Lagway after the game and just kind of how he was like chopping up with the Georgia players. I don't want to be here like saying I don't like sportsmanship or I don't think that you should like leave it on.
I don't.
But like with Trey Wilson crying and then your quarterback kind of chopping up with Georgia players, the emotion that I want to see in that spot is what Trey did. You just lost a heartbreaking game to Georgia in what has been a really, really hard season.
Yeah.
And I don't question Lagway's effort in the game at all.
Sure.
I wish he was more upset. I wish maybe he is, but I wish he showed a little more like, I can't believe that just happened. We were right there, missed a few throws. I kind of wish we had that a little bit more. And we got to count about George Gums. He played awesome in that game, and he did begin his career as a wide receiver at NIU, which is an awesome story. Yeah. And I think that kind of helped him. Like that pure athleticism, like a wide receiver coming off the edge is unblockable because you can't keep up with that guy. So that backer for Gums really did help, and he played an awesome game.
Yeah, and with the Lagway stuff, I saw that his dad had some comments on social media today for people saying like, he's known these players his entire life, like please know the situation before you speak on it and whatever. And I don't think that there's somebody that wants to win more than DJ Lagway wants to win. And I would never sit here and say that. I don't think that there's any fan that wants to win more than any of these players want to win. I don't question that. But I do think, I think back to when my husband was there. 0% chance any of Urban Meyer's players would have been cutting up on the sidelines after a loss. And so I think it's more of the fact that Florida fans feel like Napier didn't put the emphasis on rivals that maybe he should have, that bleeds into our opinion of this situation. Like, I think that's what it stems for. We want you to hate Georgia. We want you to hate Florida State. We want these things to hurt because they hurt us. We want better outcomes than this. And so I think it was completely benign. I totally believe that these are his friends from growing up. But I do think that perception matters, particularly when you are eating up. I've seen multiple reports of 10% of the NIL budget for the entire team. I'm not saying don't say hi to your friend, but like a quick, like, hey man, meet him in the tunnel afterwards.
Yeah. And
say hi to him. Like, it's perception is reality. And it looks like you didn't take this seriously. And the juxtaposition of that is Wilson on the bench covering his face crying because this one hurts so bad. And then that the two of them supposedly have something that, between the two of them, it doesn't sit right with Florida fans. That doesn't mean that Lagway doesn't care. That doesn't mean that we think he didn't give 110%. I think that he's a competitor. I think he left it all out on the field. But perception matters, particularly when you're getting paid to be there.
I think these kids are just different too.
Yeah.
I think that it is closer to a job than it's ever been, right? It's always been a job, right? Like what student athletes do. But they're literally getting paid for it. This is closer to the NFL than it's ever been. It's going to take fans time to adjust their expectations of that. It reminded me of an NFL game.
That's true. Maybe that's on us. It was like an NFL game where they cut up with their former teammates afterwards.
No, I don't love it either. And I'm not even a Florida fan. But I would look at it the same way and just be like, dude, you just lost to your biggest rival. Like, your season's over. Who cares, right? Like, the rest of the year is a joke anyway. Who cares? But we all live and die with stuff. And these kids just don't. Also, you factor in the fact that, we are so used to, you have to have perfection or near perfection to win championships. And so every loss hurts. Yeah. Every loss doesn't really matter anymore. We're all talking about like, well, A&M could drop 2 down the stretch and Georgia could drop 1 more and Ole Miss could drop 1 more. And, so every loss doesn't hurt the same way and they don't care about rivals. And I don't think that's just a Napier thing, though I do think he impacted it. I just think that's part of who these kids are now. They're getting paid millions of dollars, specifically Lagway, to play a game. and their check is going to clear at the end of the day. Lagway didn't grow up some massive Gator fan that lived right outside of Gainesville. And I don't think he doesn't love you. Like, that's not my point. But like,
Sure.
These kids are not the kids of the 90s and 2000s that still hate these guys. Like, I was on a Miami podcast the week we played them, and a guy from the 80s was still talking about how he hates these guys at FSU. You know, like, that's just not today's football, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I don't, you know, when you look at it in that context, yes, after the game, you want your kids to be just as mad as you are. I'm just telling you, they're not. They just don't care, right? Like, if, you know, for every player in the country, if Auburn offers Lagway $5 million to come play next year, which I'm not saying they will, they're all going, right? Just like LeBron would go somewhere else if the NBA didn't have a salary cap and Miami offered him $75 million instead of 50. You know, like, that's the way this works. It's a business now. The faster we can come to grips with it, the faster we'll stop whining and moaning and bitching about these things.
Never. I promise to never stop whining and moaning and bitching.
I will complain for
knowing you.
No idea.
My whole life. Just buckle up. All right. Well, we took a little, veer there, but we'll get back on track. We got another game we're going to talk about: Texas A&M and Missouri. Missouri is a team we talked about at the beginning of the season, saying like they could sleepwalk into being 10-2. Obviously it hasn't played out exactly like we thought, but Missouri's still a pretty darn good team, and Texas A&M has surprised us being maybe even tougher than we expected them to be. Should they be on upset alert?
I don't know. The game's going to be good, but I mean, so this is the first start for Matt Zollers for Missouri, and his reward is to go against Cassius Howell in this A&M defense that has 32 sacks on the season. So, I mean, he played well against Vandy last week, did Zollers, but now there's a bit of tape, and now he's being prepared for. So that is a different animal. They have to lean on the run game, does Missouri, to make it easier for Zollers. I mean, you have Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts. Those guys are unbelievable runners, and you have to be able to sort of slow down that pass rush by establishing the run and just also get your offense into a flow. Both teams are coming off a bye, and A&M, I've brought it up. I mean, they've been dealing with rat poison forever, and it hasn't bit them yet. And it feels silly to say this, what I'm about to say about A&M, given their history. I'm kind of bought in, because there's a different swagger about this A&M team that we haven't seen. Having Marcel Reed to those receivers is unbelievably electric. But they are going against the top defense in SEC in yards per game. And from the angle of being at home versus on the road, A&M has played 3 road games all year. They scored 41 against Notre Dame, 45 against Arkansas, and 49 at LSU. So I'm not worried at all about this team going on the road versus being at home. This offense is just as good at wherever they play. But I do think that Missouri has a couple opportunities, mainly running the ball on this Aggies defense, to at least keep it close.
TJ, what do you think? Does Missouri have a shot in this one?
The thing I look at the most in this is the dumbest thing to look at, but it is the Vegas line. Like, why is this only like 5.5? Why did this open up at 5.5 points? Right. Yeah. Like, they're too good with this stuff. Both of Miami's last 2 games where they were big favorites. I think they were a 14-point favorite against Louisville to open up, and then on the morning of the game, and then they were like a 10.5, 11-point favorite against SMU to open up. And both those guys' lines like plummeted before the game started. And, you know, I think the SMU game was down to like 8.5. And kind of similarly, the Louisville game dropped like 3 or 4 points to where it was like 9.5, 10 before that game kicked off. And so Miami was still favored by enough to where they should have won. But that feels weird to me. Also, I think we all looked at the Vegas line when Georgia played at Auburn, and we were like, why is that only 2.5? You know, what was it, like 4 points or something, Will? In that one, we were like, Georgia's going to steamroll them, you know, and Florida. Like, Florida's a team that doesn't have a coach and this and the other, and it's a 7-point game. Now, you know, if he doesn't nail the ball at the one, they do cover. But I think that Vegas is...
Somebody had money on that one.
They're just so good at predicting these things. And so, yeah, we all look at it and say, oh, backup quarterback, A&M's rolling right now, Cassius Howell against the new quarterback. Like, they're going to... I mean, there's a chance where they just absolutely steamroll them. I just think that they know something. And so, yeah, no technical analysis, no like, oh, well, here's where Missouri can really take advantage, because I don't think they can. A&M's a better team, and they should win this game going away. But you just look at that Vegas line, and they're right way too often. And so you probably do get maybe, I don't know if it's a little bit of an A&M coming off of a long break, like with maybe just not as much focus, knowing that, man, they can drop a game or two and be fine. Like, maybe that impacts things, just the way they go out and do it. So I don't know. I think it's relatively low scoring. I do think A&M's it done, but nothing would surprise me it's on the road, right? It's at Missouri in the SEC. It's a tough place to play because it's weird. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that this is closer than maybe we think, and Vegas is right again.
Vegas always knows, but how? How do they always know? All right, Will. So if Missouri pulls the upset, it's because they did what thing that you were not expecting?
That I was not expecting. I'm expecting for Ahmad Harder to run the ball like 30 times. I mean, probably just being able to establish sort of a quick and easy passing game with Zollers, going to guys like Kevin Coleman Jr., maybe just throw the ball out to a guy like Jamal Roberts, sort of extension of the running game. Because, I mean, A&M's going to come into this game expecting Missouri to run the ball, right, with a new quarterback in Zollers, with how good those running backs are. So if they're able to kind of catch them by surprise and say, like, yeah, we're going to get the ball to these guys, but they're going to be quick passes that you have to deal with. Like, if they can kind of throw that wrinkle in and sort of attack A&M with those running backs in a different way, that could maybe catch them by surprise. And defensively, I mean, Missouri's defense is awesome. They're the top pass defense in the conference, fourth best in rush defense. So there's probably a script where Missouri can hold A&M to like 21. That's not what I have predicted, but I mean, with how good, with how good Trotter is at the linebacker position, with how good their edge rushers are, like their personnel does have the ability to dominate a game. And we've seen A&M's offense really be hadn't had that happen to them. I'm not sure that they've played a defense with as deep of like a pass rush as Missouri has. So maybe it's that. I'll go with that. I'll go with Missouri's pass rushers are able to kind of wreak havoc on the game because A&M hasn't played, I don't think, a pair of edge rushers like Zion and Damon Wilson.
TJ, obviously A&M is sitting at 8-0, so they can afford to lose a game. But Missouri's sitting at 6-2. Given their strength of schedule, or maybe lack thereof, relative to the rest of the SEC, is this a playoff elimination game for them?
I think so. But we just talked about in our playoff thoughts, like the 10-2 teams that might be around there. Now, if Georgia was to lose to I mean, there's a scenario where they could still sneak in, right? But you'd really need chaos. Like Georgia loses to Texas, and then Texas loses to A&M. And maybe Georgia loses to Georgia Tech too. Yeah, you'd need them to drop below 10-2. So yeah, you need Georgia to lose 2. To get to 9-3. You need Texas to upset Georgia in Athens, but then lose at home to A&M in a game that at that point would mean something for A&M because they'd be sitting at 10-2 too if Missouri had just beat them. So I think so, but I also think Missouri's out anyway. So I don't know that they're sneaking them in. I mean, and as a Florida State fan, yeah, I'll go back to this. I mean, with the hurt quarterback rule, even if they were to win, unconvincingly, does it matter? So I think they're already out, but they will put the nail in the coffin if they lose this one.
All right, well, give me your score prediction.
Everything that I just predicted that I capped, I'm going against. I got A&M like 31-21. I think there's a decent bit of points scored in this game. I've kind of gone against A&M sort of like in the trap spot, in the letdown spot in the past, and they've absolutely dominated every single one of those games. So I don't really, and coming off a bye now, I think they're going to be ready for it. Missouri's not going to sneak up on them. So I'll go A&M 31-21. I think they keep rolling.
All right, TJ, what about you?
Yeah, I have a tough time seeing Missouri keep this close. But again, I'll just trust Vegas here and say that it's only like a 7-point game. So somehow they keep it weird. 26-19. We'll go with the weirdest score ever.
26-19. Okay. That is, I'm going 28-21, but that is the weirdest score ever. Okay. All right, guys. Well, this was fun. Lots of good games coming up in your, what is that? Are we at week 10 now?
It's 11, I think.
11? It means it's almost over, and I don't love that.
There's like a month and a half of playoffs. You'll be fine.
That's by January 20th last year, I was like, maybe this is too long. And I'm usually a more is more person. But all right, well, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and follow your work.
Yeah, I'm on W Thomas Sports on Twitter and Tailgate Talk SEC on YouTube, podcast everywhere else.
All right. And TJ, what about you?
Yeah, TJ_Pinger on Twitter and College Football Addiction on YouTube.
All right. At Allie_Peak. Make sure you are subscribed to A Peek Inside SEC Football. We will see y'all back next week.